What is going on, everyone? Platinum Beast coming at you with yet another video. Today we're talking about something that I found out recently that is very interesting about the Perth mint. So without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, everyone, so Perth mint is the topic of the day. Now, what's interesting about the Perth mint that I didn't know, and some of y'all maybe didn't know either, is the Perth mint is actually not the only mint in Australia, believe it or not. For, I guess, years now, I thought the Perth mint was the sovereign mint of Australia, and that's what made the bullion, and that's what made the money and everything. I thought that was their U.S. mint, right? In the United States, we have the U.S. mint that puts out bullion and puts out money. But in Australia, they have the Perth mint, and then they have another mint. And that other mint is known as the Royal Mint of Australia. Now, I thought those two titles were sort of interchangeable. I thought they were the same exact thing. I thought the Royal Mint of Australia just meant the Perth mint. I thought Perth was just short for it. But it's actually not, and I was actually wrong. And so what's interesting about that is there's really a big difference between the two mints, and their history is fascinating, right? We're going to go take a look at their history in a little bit here, but right off the bat, what the main difference between the two mints are is the Royal Australian Mint makes all of the Australian currency. So the paper money and the coinage that's used for circulation purposes, that's what the Royal Mint of Australia does. The Perth Mint mainly focuses on bullion products. So your kookaburras, your koalas, your lunar series, your kangaroos, all that stuff comes from the Perth Mint. But they have a separate mint known as the Royal Australian Mint that makes all of their actual money that they use in their economy and as a circulating currency. Now, it wasn't always that way. And again, we're going to go take a look at it here in a minute. But it wasn't always the case that the Royal Mint and the Perth Mint were A, separate, and B, did what they do today, right? Initially, the Perth Mint was the first mint, and then the Royal Mint came along a little bit after. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go over to APMEX's website because they detailed the history of the two mints very well, and we're also going to take a look and see what APMEX has for sale as far as from the Perth Mint and the Royal Australian Mint. This video is not sponsored by APMEX or anything like that, so this is just me showcasing for y'all some interesting stuff I found. So I'll see y'all over there. Okay, everybody, so I've got the APMEX article pulled up here that talks specifically about what the difference is between the Perth Mint and the Royal Australian Mint, because there is a difference and they're two completely separate mints. I didn't know this beforehand, but now I do. So I'm going to share with y'all a little bit about that. So essentially, I'm not going to read through this whole thing for y'all. I'm going to link it at the bottom of this video so y'all can go and take a look at it if you want to. But what I am going to do is I'm just going to kind of summarize it a little bit. So essentially what happened was the Perth Mint was the original mint, right? It was made way, way, way back in the day, and it actually made the circulating currency for Australia for a very long time. Essentially, somewhere down the line, the Royal Australian Mint, as we can see here, was established in 1965. So this was essentially when the split occurred. They decided we're going to have this mint make the currency and this mint make the bullion, okay? So Perth has made bullion all along, but it used to make currency, but it doesn't anymore, and now the Royal Australian Mint is who makes the currency for the country of Australia. Now, what's interesting about this, and you can look up this stuff on your own. I'm going to link it down below. But it gives you the history of the Perth Mint and the history of the Royal Australian Mint. But that's the main difference between the two, is one makes the currency, one makes the bullion, okay? And it says right here, you know, Royal Mint is the only mint that issues circulating currency in Australia, and Perth Mint issues bullions and proofs. However, what's interesting, and we're going to take a look over here at APMEX's actual website and what they have for sale. We'll go to silver, all right? and we'll go down here to the Perth Mint. And actually, we'll go and click on available products, okay? Because we don't want just the Perth Mint. So we're going to click on available products, and we'll go down here to sovereign issuing country is Australia. And then we can go down to the brand, okay? Now, what's interesting is they have Perth Mint listed and Royal Australian Mint listed. So that means the Royal Australian Mint actually does mint some bullion. And if we click on the Perth Mint, they clearly have a lot more offerings, and they give you your standard kangaroos, kookaburras, emus, lunar series, all that good stuff. Now, what I was interested to see was, what does the Royal Australian Mint put out? If it's something different than the Perth Mint. Kind of confusing being an American and having one mint per se. But let's click on Royal Australian Mint and let's see what they have. So as you can see here, the Royal Australian Mint actually does put some stuff out. And they do have some bullion. Most of it is more numismatic, if you will. I reckon we could go to price low to high and see. Yeah, some of this stuff is fairly decent premium, but it is higher premium, so most of it is very numismatic. But a lot of this stuff is not nearly as popular as what the Perth Mint puts out. I don't even recognize most of this. I've seen the redback spider a little bit here and there come up in certain places. And I've seen this like lunar ox, and I never understood how this was different, right? I thought it was just Perth, right? But it's not. It's the Royal Australian Mint. And they put this kind of stuff out. So they do put out some bullion, so to speak. It's definitely not as attractive as the Perth Mint, I must say. Y'all's Perth Mint over there in Australia just does a much better job than y'all's Royal Mint. Maybe that has something to do with Australian natives versus the British having an influence. It being called the Royal Australian Mint versus just the Perth Mint, right? I don't know. Do with that as you will, but it's really fascinating and really interesting that a country would have two different mints. Not only do they have different purposes, but they also have some crossover. Like, why is that? What purpose does this serve? Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any idea why they have a Australian lunar series from the Royal Australian Mint and a Perth Mint lunar series from the Perth Mint, both mints coming from the same country. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but again, I'm just an American. What do I know? Other than we've got the US Mint, and that's all we've ever really needed. But yeah, y'all, that's what I have for you. It's rather fascinating stuff. It really, really is. You know, I never knew there were two different mints in Australia. Now, I will say some comparison, so to speak, is in the United States, we may only have the US Mint, so to speak, but we do have different locations of the mints locations. So we have like West Point and Philadelphia and different Denver and stuff, different locations that the mint makes coins, and they make different coins in different locations, and they put the mint marks on those coins, but it's all the same mint. It seems very much like in Australia, they're both very separate entities. I would be willing to bet they even the profits that come from each mint go to different entities as well. Maybe the Perth goes to Australian government. Maybe the Royal Mint goes back to the actual UK. I'm unsure. That's just spitballing there. But yeah, y'all, that's what I have for you today. Super interesting stuff. There's two different mints, the Perth Mint, the Royal Australian Mint. Let me know if you realize this down in the comment section down below. And with all that being said, until next time, we'll see y'all.